my friend. And so we're going to have a conversation. And tonight's conversation is a risque conversation. And we've been talking over time about the different crises that's going on out there. And one of those crises is about paternity and understanding paternity and what paternity is about and what's actually going on with families, relationship, and the proof of children, who their parents are. We naturally know, right, Clyde? We naturally know that a mother will always know that she's the mother. Always
Right.
know that she's the mother. But the father, not so much.
That's right.
Even though a man can go out and every day of the year, 365 day in the year, impregnate a different woman, right? That's just how we're built. That's how nature built us. It takes 9 months for a woman to have one child, or if she's lucky, she may have twins or triplets. But she definitely know that she's the mother, right? And it's assumed that in a relationship, when a man is married to a woman, that the father, the husband is the child's father. But as we know, that's not necessarily the case,
It's
right?
it's crazy, man. Looking at the statistics, like I knew it was something ridiculous, but nothing, you know, like because up until recently it was impossible to verify. Like DNA testing is a recent thing
True.
that we're capable of doing. So before, if something like this happened, if paternity fraud happened, the guy would never find out,
True.
like ever.
True.
And looking at the statistics numbers, like I was in shock. Like I can't believe that that the numbers are this high, you know. But we have an appropriate song to play. Let me
Yeah.
play it
We should get into it.
before we forget.
So let's play the intro.
I've been sitting here thinking about all the things you do for me, how you make me feel. But wondering if it's the same for you. But when you're not around, I lose my mind, 'cause you keep it like a secret. Why won't you reveal it? Just please tell me that
It's poetic, isn't it?
Oh, it's so poetic, so poetic. So let's get into it. So I've been doing some research and I found some serious information on it. And yesterday I spent some time writing up some information to do the show. And the craziest thing happened during saving it. The entire document just somehow vanished, and it saved an empty document. And I called you and I said, Clyde, I can't believe the shit.
All day's work.
The whole day's work gone.
Wow.
I don't think nature wants me to talk about this.
It's happened to me a whole bunch of times before, like working on a track, on a music piece, and you put in like 2-3 hours of good work, and then you lose it. Or like I've lost entire tracks completely, and I could never retrieve them, and there goes months of work, that you never get back.
That's very true. Very, very true. And it's one of those things, It's one of those things. But it happened. But because of working on it and speaking to you, it was like, hey Garth, you you wrote it. You know, did you just copy and paste from somewhere else? I said, no, I did some research, took some information, but I reword the entire thing. So it's an original piece. You know, I just read through the whole thing and then put my own word in it. And, you know, so I didn't want to plagiarize, but I lost the whole thing. And hey, I use a few choice words, you know, but I couldn't just keep lamenting over it because what? It happened.
You were able to put together some, just like a little summary, though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I was able to get back into it. So,
Okay.
you know, so we're gonna talk more about it. So, I believe paternity should be mandatory. What's your feedback?
Well, in my case, what I can say is that I have not in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the dad of someone else's son,
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't really apply to me in this situation right now. Like, I don't have to worry about it. But I may be. I hope I'm not the father of someone else raising a kid of mine somewhere out there. Like, that would be scary. Oh my goodness. But I mean, the thing is, it's so difficult to, like, it's impossible to keep track of, you know, what these women are doing out there nowadays. Like, you can't follow up on them. They can just, you know, something can happen, you know, and you will never find out about it. But somebody else will be stuck.
Well, we know
You
there's
know, with a
something that
bill.
happened. We know there's something that can happen, and oftentimes does happen. You know, being virtuous is not really what's going on out there. You know, and so we understand, and anyone that's listening and can think about and understand what we're saying here is that paternity fraud's been going on for decades, centuries, you know, so it's not something new. It's just that because we're in modern times and sexual liberations and the freedom and the different rights that's been awarded, women are now just free and do whatever they want to, and they'll tell you straight up, you're not a man if you're not willing to help me raise my child, you know. And another thing that tends to happen, and oftentimes when I see different shows or hear different conversations, I'm a part of different conversations, or I should say not are, a part of different conversations, I would hear a woman say to men like, you're not a real man. You're not a real man because you won't help me take care of my children or my child, or you know that if you want to be with me, I come with children and it's a package deal, right? And I was
I wonder if they actually understand that men, like, we don't really like that.
mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like, they may think that we have no problem, no issue with it at all, and we do. You know, like,
Right.
I want to pass on my legacy. Like, I
Correct.
want to father my own children.
Correct.
Like, I don't want to take care of somebody else's. You know, like, I know it sounds horrible when you say it like that. Like, I don't want to take care of anybody else's children, but I mean, come on. Like, I'm just trying to be honest and truthful here. You know, like. I think anybody who says that, well, I've seen that. Like, I'm not the stepfather. I'm the father that stepped up. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's like a quote, you know, like guys, you know, like patting themselves on the back, you know, like for, you know, essentially taking care of someone else's cream pie. Hey, it's a risky conversation,
That's
right?
true, right?
I can say that.
Yeah, it's a risky conversation. You just have to be careful with some of the different platforms,
Of course.
policies.
Yeah. All right.
You know, uh, paternity was established for the sole purpose of making sure that the child was taken care of, right? Or the child is not wondering in the future, who's my father, right? So paternity was established. And even now, I remember I was watching a show the other day, and it was a 45-year-old man, and he was in tears because he wanted to know who his father is, right? And I'm telling you, that can be a very hurtful feeling, wanting to know who your biological parent is. Now, I have a daughter, and I'm happy to say no one in the world can tell me that can say she's not my child, because she's a splitting image of me. I didn't have to worry about paternity, and as the idiom go, knock on wood, I know she's my child because I had the gift of dreaming about her before she came to this world. I knew what she was going to do, how she was going to do it, and I told her mother, like, hey, this is what she's going to do. And exactly what I said she was going to do, because I dreamt it, is what she did. And having a child and knowing that the child is yours, it's like, I remember when she was born. Now, I was at the hospital because I helped the doctors. They obviously pulled her out, and I cut the umbilical cord, and they put her on the table, and she was just bawling. They're wiping her off, and they gave me the cloth to wipe her off, and I'm like cleaning her off, like the stuff that they do in the hospital, and I'm cleaning her off, and I said, hey, and she started looking around like, I know this voice, it's like it was the most, even talking about it right now, my heart is melting because when I looked at her, she was a splitting image of me, and I was like, oh man, I never fathomed or even remotely questioned that she was not my child, because I know she was my child. I remember when I was, doing my magic to create her, But for some men out there, some families out there, that is painful. I don't know if you know the song that Kanye West released back in 2005.
I can't recall it.
The song talks about. The song talks about.
Can we play this on here? Or?
No.
Okay.
But about a woman being gold diggers, and that he's not broke, and about being a woman being with a man and a man being with a woman, and many years later he found out that the child was not his, right? So I'm going to get into a story, but before I get into it, I want to go over some stuff, and we can
I also have the stories that on here that you wanted me to read.
Yeah, but not right now. Not right now. So like I was saying earlier, that paternity was established for the importance of both the child and the parents to help protect the future, of the children, and ensure that the children gets the financial support that they need. So it's kind of tie in with child support at the same time, right? And the accuracy of paternity helps to determine if the father is actually the father. And across the United States, we live in the United States, many states have different rights, laws for proving paternity. And here in Florida, in order for a woman to apply and claim for child support, they need to prove a paternity for that child, right? But there are other states where...
This is Florida?
Yeah, this is Florida.
Okay.
They have to prove paternity for the woman to get child support for the child. But in other states, they have different laws that frown upon that. But the majority of the United States have different laws for paternity. So I was in doing the research, I found out that there are countries that paternity is illegal. So this one country, for example, pardon me, everyone. This one country, for example, France. So France have a law that makes paternity illegal. So let me look for this. So paternity is illegal in France. It says that because paternity is to ensure the protection of the children, they made it illegal. So let me read it. Private DNA paternity testing is illegal, including through laboratories in other countries, and is punishable by up to a year in prison and a 15,000 euro. Right? So 15,000 euros and 1 year in prison. The French Council of State has described the law's purpose as upholding the French regime of filiation and preserving the peace of family. French regime of filiation. My apologies. And preserving the peace of family. So, meaning that if a man suspects that his wife, girlfriend, fiance, whatever the title that she holds in the relationship, decides to go out there and get frisky with someone else, then when that child is born, if the man suspects that that's not his child, maybe let's say he has blue eyes and the child comes out with green eyes, and let's say he has brown eyes or dark brown eyes and the child comes out with blue eyes, he can't ask openly for paternity test. And if he pursues it and get laboratory involved, he will go to jail and pay a hefty fine. Now imagine, right? I'm brown skin. You're light skin, right? You're European diaspora, Caucasian man. I'm from African diaspora, man, right? And you now have a child with you like brown skin woman. You like African woman. That's your taste. That's your not necessarily African diaspora woman. Brown skin people, right? I know you. I see you all. We talk about this all.
You'd be close in this assumption.
What?
You would be close in this assumption.
I know you do. I know you do. We have talks, and I see how you like. Man, she's so beautiful, right? And so imagine you got married or in a relationship with a African diaspora woman, right? And you have a child. Chances are the child's going to come out light skinned, right? Because of the blend of both of you. But let's say the next child comes out fully brown skin and have none of your qualities, right? Rather than she having a hitter shy child, she went hiding and have a hider child. I'm just joking.
It's shaping up to be like the worst nightmare.
Yeah, right? And the child comes out full dark skin, no features of you. It's going to make you kind of wonder if that's your child, because you're going to be saying, okay, she's brown skin, and maybe the child took on all of her ancestral features and complexion. But in the back of your mind, you're still going to be wondering, how is it that the first child have curly hair, light skin, my features, and this child doesn't, right? And she's going to tell you that's your child, right? But if you were living in the United States, obviously you can do a paternity test and you won't get locked up for it. But in France, good luck with that, my friend. And I suspect other countries have similar laws in place to protect the stability and the status of the family. So let's move on. So any feedback from you?
Yeah, I was just thinking, going way back to when the institution of marriage was first created. I've read up on something like that, and it got me thinking that like we came up with it to ensure that whatever legacy was passed on, it was done so to your own offspring.
Correct.
And we came up with the institution of marriage to kind of like lock, to the husband and the wife. Together. But I mean, obviously that didn't stop anything. And the reason why this was done way in the past was because there was no DNA testing, so there was no way to find out for sure. I think this could have been one of the reasons, why marriage was formed, as a way to know that, okay, they're married, so this is my offspring. It's not anybody else's.
Correct.
We thought that by socially creating something, it was going to restrict our biological imperatives,
Correct.
Which in many cases it probably did, like with the fact that when people cheated in the past, they were socially ostracized, isn't it that book, Anna Karenina, for example? Supposedly she commits suicide, by jumping on the train tracks because she had an affair, and this takes place like 100 years ago, and it was frowned upon, and everybody in her social circle was just cutting her off, and she just she couldn't deal with the pressure, and so she ends up committing suicide. It's like a tragedy,
Right. That talking about that, there was in the past, I think it's called Rosewood, in the United States, and you can look it up where Rosewood is located. But yeah, so it's a horrible situation that happened with Rosewood. So during the time when certain things in America that are taking place, certain atrocities that are taking place.
It's in Florida?
I believe so. Yeah, Rosewood, Florida. Yeah. So there was a very tragic situation that happened in Rosewood, and it happened because a wife cheated and lied. So, we as men, we are very territorial. We're like the gorillas in the jungle, the lions in the jungle. We're very territorial. We mark our territory, right? And so, being so territorial, we're protective and overly protective. And it's my wife. Don't touch her. Don't look at her. In some cases, some guys will go out and do the most vile things to another person just based off a woman saying that it happened without any proof. So this Rosewood situation happened because one of the men, when he would go off to work, his wife had an affair and she was cheating. And she somehow got caught up. And when she got caught up, she didn't want, and it start to show, and it came out that something might have been going on. And the husband got wind of it. And rather than fessing up to what she did, that she had an affair, she lied. And she said it was a black guy raped me. Right? I believe that's how the story went, right? I watched the movie many years ago. Somebody turned me on to it. And that was so far from the truth. And during that time, emotions were heightened, racial divide, and that place went through living hell. Places were being burned, people were being killed on both sides. It was an horrific event that took place in Rosewood, simply because a woman lied, cheated at an affair, and lied. So having a child that's not a man's child, you can understand the emotional turmoil that his soul, his spirit would be going through. So, I'm going to tell you something. A while back, I was sitting down with my mom, and she called me, and I came by, and I was sitting down with her, and I was watching a show, and it was a guy asking for paternity of his child, and the woman was making a big deal about it, as if the guy was wrong for wanting a paternity test of the child. So I made some notes here. So during this episode that I was watching, I said to my mom, paternity should be mandatory. And my mom replied, that will never happen. That will never happen. And I said, it should. And her response was, hey, if she went out and did something, the guy must have did something. Must have done something.
I've heard this one before.
Yeah, the guy must have done something. Because usually it's never the woman's fault, right?
Yeah, they have to justify it somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Now my mom is 76 years old. right? And when she responded to me, that will never happen, I thought to myself, it should happen. So I looked at my mom and I said to myself, I understand why, but I won't even get into that. Yeah, it's left for another time, another story time, another risque conversation. No. So I said to her, Mom, I'm going to tell you a story. Right? I'm going to tell you a story of someone I knew many years ago. And I told the story to her, which is a story I'm going to tell everyone. And my mom responded to me and said, the guy must have did something wrong. I said, Mom, he didn't do anything wrong. She said, yeah, he must have done something wrong. I said, Mom, he didn't do anything wrong. Right? So I'm going to tell a story. All right? When I heard this story, it broke my heart. It literally broke my heart. And I'm going to get into it. And even now, just thinking about it, it just sends shockwave through my body. So let's do some story time telling right now. So when I was younger, this was about 15, 16 years ago, I'm out hanging out and just having conversation with people while hanging out. I met a couple, and for privacy purposes, we're gonna call him Anthony, and we're just gonna call the wife. We're gonna refer to her as the wife or his wife. And this is dealing with paternity and paternity fraud. So this couple lived in West Miramar. I remember. Let me back up. You remember I said many years ago, Kanye West released a song about knowing of someone that raised a child, and then 18 years later, he found out the child wasn't his child. I didn't know that I would meet someone. But let me get into it. So, I was at an event, and I met this couple, Anthony and his wife, and we kind of kept in touch. And Anthony was in the military, but he wasn't full-time in the military, and once a month, he had to go out and do some routine military stuff. And he would be gone for like 3 days, sometimes a week. And then he would come back home. So they bought a house and they were living in South Florida. I'm not going to say exactly where because, for privacy purposes, I don't know if they still live there. Or she still lived there, or the in parties involved still lived there. But I remember every month, he would go out, and every once in a while we'd talk. And it's like, hey, what's going on? And then he was like, hey, what's going on, Soshahi? How you been? How's work? How's the family? And I was like, oh, their family's good. How's your family? It's like, family's good. And about, I think it was January, February of 2008. A bunch of things happened in 2008. I was in property management. And I was at work. And while I was at work, Anthony came by. And like I say, I know the couple, right? I knew them. Anthony came by, and Anthony said he's looking for an apartment, and I said, why? You're married? He was like, yeah, I am, but I don't think I'll be married anymore. So I said, what happened? So he decided to start telling me. So this is what happened. Anthony had a best friend for a very long time. And the best friend bought a house across the street, right, from his house. A house became available, and the best friend bought a house. And every month that the husband, Anthony, goes out for 3 days, however long that they need for him to, do some updated military stuff. Apparently, his wife and the best friend was having an affair. And when he came by and he was sitting, it seemed like he had just been into some tragic accident. So Anthony said to me, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And when a man is broken, you just see tears running down their eyes. He's not crying out, but just tears running out of his eye. And he says, Soshahi, every month I have to go. I take care of the bills. I pay all the mortgage. I pay for her car, my car. I take care of our son. And I recently had an accident. And I said, you had an accident? He said, yes. I had a very bad, tragic car accident. And I said, what happened? He said, I don't want to really talk about the car accident, but I had a tragic car accident, and I had to get blood transfusion. So, obviously, the natural course of action is to go to the closest family member to get a blood transfusion, which would be his son. So while in the hospital, in dire need of a blood transfusion, they brought his son in, and they were going to check to see if the blood type matched. Clyde, the blood type did not match. That was not his child. So if he didn't get the emergency blood transfusion, he would have died. It would have, passed on. So they had to find out the next closest person to him, and that was his brother. And at the time, his brother lived in New York. So they had to do an emergency flight to come down, because if he didn't get that blood transfusion fast enough, he wouldn't have been around anymore. So they flew his brother down. They gave him blood transfusion, and that saved his life. And they didn't reveal to the son that it wasn't, his blood. They kind of keep it a hush hush. So he's telling me, it's like, I love him. I love him. I raised him from he was a baby, and now he's 17 years old. And I'm finding out that his blood doesn't match my blood. That doesn't make sense. So he starts questioning his wife. And he said he questioned his wife almost every day for 6 months before she finally broke and started feeding him a little bit of information. And so she decided to tell him that, he's not his son. And he said, he asked her, how long did you know this? How long have you known? And she said she's known for a long time. But she still would not tell him who the potential or who the biological father of his son is. Now let me tell you, Clyde. I'm sitting there and I'm hearing this. And it's like I couldn't believe it, because when I met them, they seemed so much in love, and they have been married for years. They knew each other before their son, and I guess he must have pulled some information out, and she confessed that his son might be his best friend's child. I suspect, based on what he told me, of how the best friend would be really close with the boy. Like, imagine someone, you have a friend, and they're play with your child, and they're really nice, and they'll buy gifts and do special things, and your child is calling that person uncle, because obviously it's your father's best friend, and your mother also know him, and they've known each other for years. So he's uncle, right? So Anthony marbles or bearings start turning, gears start turning, and he started like putting two and two together. Like, now a lot of things made sense. He would see his best friend buy these things and do these things, and he just think it's my best friend, right? Now, somehow a DNA test was done, and it confirmed that it was the best friend child. That's his son. So now she had no choice of opening up and telling him everything. So that's how he knew that the child was his best friend's child, because she told him that every time that he leaves, they would be communicating. His best friend and they will be getting together and having sex. And she got pregnant, and she didn't want to say anything about it, so she told him it was his child. The crazy thing, what he said to me was like, it made sense that 17 and a half years ago, he came home and she was extra nice and romantic and sexual, and she wanted to have sex all the time. He said it made sense to him because she was covering up something. Timeline. She wanted to cover up timeline. Mm-hmm. So she already made a decision, premeditated, to give the son to her husband, because she comes up pregnant, and she can't tell her husband she's going to abort it. That's their first child, right? So she has to cover her tracks. He told me that he couldn't even say a word to his friend. He couldn't even look at him straight. He didn't even ask him why, which is why he was at the apartment complex I worked at the time, looking for a place. Now, you're probably wondering, why is he looking for a place when he owns a home? That's because they had a conversation, and she wants the house. She wants the house, and he needs to leave and find somewhere else to live. Right.
It sounds a lot like, like being the subject of a joke. which doesn't just last, like for the duration of the joke, but for like 20 years, like 18 years.
Yes, this was 17 and a half, almost
Yeah,
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
And then real emotions, real feelings are invested into it. And you find out that it was just a joke. The whole thing it was just a joke at your expense.
Literally at his expense, because now he lost his. She wants him out of the house, and she's the one that was committed infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
She wants him out of the house. She must have the house. It's not his child. All his resources went into raising his son, and he'll love his son, right? And it's as if she's blaming him for going out and doing his service duty for the country. So now he's doing his service duty while she is punishing him. And from then until now, I mean, when I say now, I mean up until the time when he was telling me from the birth or before the birth of the child, right? From inception until birth, until 17 plus years later, and now he must be the one to leave the house because she wants the house, right? As if he was wrong. And that's part of the reason why paternity test is illegal in some country, and even in the United States here, people will be placed as the father and never even have met the woman at all, right? I don't know what happened to Anthony because he wasn't able to get the place, the apartment, because it was a income restricted apartment, and he had made too much money. I suspect that he found some place and they divorced and she took the house. But that ruined many people's life. But I can tell you this. I don't know if what happened, but her son decided that he did not want to talk to his mother anymore.
You found out too?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He found out because when his father moved out, he wanted to know why, and they were hiding it from him. They were keeping it from him. Mm-hmm. He didn't want his son because he said his son had nothing to do with it. He thought that was his father, and his father thought that was his son.
Going back to a point that you made earlier on, you said that the wife, she blamed him for going out and working. And
yeah, she said it was his fault because he leaves for 1 week or 3 days every month.
Like he wasn't there.
So he wasn't there, right? Every month.
In many cases, I was going to say that because it got me thinking. When women blame men for stepping out,
mm-hmm.
right? Like they're doing it as a psychological thing to justify what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, it's like warfare.
Right, but in many cases, they'll turn something that the guy is doing, which is not necessarily bad. He may be doing something nice, but they'll turn around and say that he's doing something bad. Like, let's say he is nice, just straight up, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, he was too nice. I got bored. Like he was like always there, like I just couldn't deal with him anymore, so I had to step out. So now they're not really using anything bad against the guy. They're just calling him out on being nice and getting her flowers.
Being good.
Being good. But,
yeah. Being good is a crime.
Right.
Right. It's almost like the mean guys are the kings, and the bad guys are the peasants.
I mean, at that point, anything can serve, to make the person look as the bad person,
right?
To justify what it is that you're doing,
right? Because
I can't believe he got me flowers, like how dare he,
Exactly.
Like, well, he took me out on a date the other day. I can't believe he's doing something like this.
It's
ridiculous.
Why you saying that? I'm gonna just like touch on a story, and of course, the next story time, I probably. At some point talk about this, but I'm going to touch on someone I was dating, a very attractive young lady, very attractive. Her parents liked me. Her father liked me. Her mother told her that I was good for her. But I'm going to tell you why she decided to ghost me, right? So we went out on dates. I actually, how we met was I went to her job. I was a part of a business, and we were doing an event in a hotel, and we needed to rent out a certain section of the hotel, and we needed a rooms for a guest that was coming in from California, and she worked at the counter, and she saw me, and she was smitten. Like, when I went up to talk to her, noticeably she was nervous, but I didn't know it was because of me. And she had to have her coworker come and help me because she was nervous to help me. And so I realized that because the coworker kind of hinted like, hey, she kind of like you, but not directly like that. She was kind of like, so I went to my seat and sat down in the lobby, and she left behind the desk and came over to the lobby to talk to me. And it was pleasant. She's pleasant person. Like, I haven't spoken to her in a while, but pleasant person. But what caused her to react negative to me was because I did something nice. And here's what I did. I opened the door for her. I went to...
How could you?
I went to pick her up, and being chivalrous, I opened the door. That's just me. That's just how I am. I open the door. If a person is walking up to a door, I will hold the door for a person. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. If I have a friend, you know how I am. I'll hold the door so someone can walk in, right? Mm-hmm. Some people will say, they won't say anything. Some people will say thank you. But in her case, I noticed she just got distance from me, and I couldn't figure it out. So I called her up and asked her what she's doing, and she said she's out jogging. I said, I'm close. I'm going to swing by. She said, okay, cool. So I swung by, and she came in the car. We started talking. So her father came out to put something in the garbage bin, and he saw me, and he waved. And I waved, and they called her inside, and I was invited inside, and I met the parents. So they were having like family, or she decided she was going to prepare something for me to eat, and I went by, and she introduced me to her mom, and her mom and I, like, we kicked it off very well. And obviously I was older than her, right? Well, that's not obvious, but I was older than her. And her mother mentioned my age and mentioned her age. And she said, that's the kind of man you need. And she said, really? Yes, that's the kind of man you need. And she said, I know what happened. So what you mean I know what happened? She said, the conversation came up about me opening the door for her and her not wanting to deal with me after that because she could open the door for herself. Let me tell you, man, that was my first time ever experiencing feminism. My first time ever. I did not know what that was because I've never been let down easily because I was chivalrous to a woman, right? But obviously, some women, be nice to them. They didn't like that. Well, but we'll talk about that. But yeah,
I experienced that at the restaurant a lot of times. Like you do something nice for somebody, and if she happens to have a big pair of tits, then you're doing it, like, oh, because of that. But I do nice things, and I go out of my way to make it a little special, even if it's a dude, somebody who's a regular. He shows up there. Like I don't mind doing something nice for somebody. It's just it's seen as such. It's seen as like if she's attractive, then now you're
going the extra mile.
Exactly, you're doing something extra for her because you're trying to get something out of her. No, I'm not trying to get anything. Okay, like I'm just doing it to be nice,
Right.
Because
of the
it's
expectation.
misunderstood like that. Yeah, it's how it's seen.
Yeah.
But it gets a bit ridiculous because now you end up like I think that I'm going out of my way not to do that now. You know what I mean? Just so that it's not seen the wrong way. And what is that? It's like we're purposefully trying to adjust our behavior not to come off as too nice because we may expect something in return, as a consequence of that.
Right.
And I don't think that's the case at all.
Right. Yeah. So in Anthony's case, being nice was the detriment of his family, his relationship, his finance, for being a good guy.
Yeah.
We have some stats. And
you want me to read some of these horror stories?
Yeah, read some of these stories, because we don't want people to think that we're just here, just talking. And obviously, earlier you heard me. I read some information from overseas friends about their paternity laws, and there are so many other paternity cases and paternity frauds out there, and some of you that are listening might know someone that have experienced that, but it's a serious crisis. It's a serious crisis that's been going on for a very, very, very long time.
Let me read some of these cases. What's been happening in court for years?
Which case is that?
This is
number one?
Case one, case number two. There's three cases that they use as examples here. Similar stories to what happened to your friend Anthony. So let's see. For years, singer Neo of California paid child support to an ex-girlfriend for a boy she claimed was his. A DNA paternity test eventually proved he wasn't a biological father, but because the state of California considers any man to be the father if he puts himself out there as one, the mother can come after that man financially as if he were the biological father. Case number two. In 2010, the California Supreme Court refused to review a tough court decision for homeless man Hardy Wilburn. Way back in 1991, Wilburn was named as the father of a 5-year-old child, even though he was never properly informed by the state. He was subsequently ordered to pay child support, despite the fact that a 2008 paternity test excluded him as a possible father, and that he never acted as father to the child. The court stated that the mother was entitled to back child support payments in the tens of thousands of dollars. You can read the opinion here.
Oh my gosh! Did you hear that? Oh god!
That is crazy.
That is
So wait. The paternity test proved that he was not the father.
That's right.
And they still charged him with paternity and went back retroactively for him to pay all that back payment to her.
Yes.
You see how criminal? Do you see how criminal that is?
What is that? Common law marriage or something?
Yeah, when you're with someone for 7 years, and I mean some states, some places it's 10 years.
If you live with a person,
Yeah, if you
even
live,
if you're not married,
even if you're not
considered
married
by the state as if you actually are.
Right. The definite. That's what common law marriage is, because most people think that marriage is between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. It's not the case. There's three entities in your marriage. There's you, the state, and the wife. So the man, the state, and the woman. The state is always in the middle. The state is always there. When you're, we'll talk about other stuff, but it's three entities in the marriage. That's why they can tell you how to handle your relationship. They take control of your children, but we'll talk about those other things because I'm telling you guys, I have some information because I've been studying this for a very long time. Like, I've been studying things about this for a very long time. So when I share this information about marriage and being married with this through the state, and being married not using the state, and also common law marriages, I've been looking at it for a long time. For a long time. There is even a conversation going on about how can a person be married without the state, because that's a contract. When you get married, you sign a contract with the government. And I know, at least based on what I've studied and spoke with some attorneys in the past and some other individuals that I've known that have done certain things, I know that there is a way to go about tying the knot without the state being involved. Obviously, there's some documentation that needs to be rectified, but there's a way to tie the knot without signing a contract, which is the marriage certificate.
Okay.
All right. But continue.
Let me go back into this case 3. Sorry about this. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania resident Mike L. was the subject of a heart-wrenching New York Times article back in 2005, when the tidal wave of paternity fraud awareness was really starting to grow. Mike divorced his wife, the mother of his daughter, when he discovered an affair and a paternity test proved the child wasn't his. He paid child support and nurtured his parental relationship for years, even though he was not his daughter's biological father. He continued to dutifully pay support until his ex decided to marry the man whom she claimed was the biological father. Mike filed to end his financial obligations to his daughter, since the biological father would now be in the household. He ultimately discovered he loved the girl so much he couldn't deny legal paternity and risk losing all contact with her.
Wow.
That's crazy, man. Yeah.
That goes back to kind of similar to Anthony's story, right? Difference is that was a young lady that was a child. But this is very similar because the son decided that he did not want to talk to his mother anymore.
Yeah.
She deceived him and had him believing that Anthony was his father for 17 plus years. Right? And here's another story. It's just so, it's heart-wrenching what's going on out there. And people, we're not saying that men have not done anything to remotely. Men have obviously, it's common knowledge that men have gone out there and had relations with other women, have outside children, and destroy their family. We know that has happened. Chances are, you look across the street, and your neighbor is one of those people. You know, there are men out there that are at arm's length of these kind of situations that they have put their family through, but the results still turns out to be the same, because the children are the ones that suffer. You know, I must mention my daughter again. And Clyde, one day you'll be lucky to have a child, and you'll understand. And anyone out there that knows me can attest that having a child is one of the greatest gifts that the creators can do for us, giving us the ability to be able to reproduce and bring life to our duplicates. You know, whether we duplicate ourselves as a female or we duplicate ourselves as a male. But when I look at my daughter, even sometimes when she pisses me off, even sometimes when she pisses me off, I don't know how a man or a woman can do things and not think about what consequence it's going to be when the child grows up. It is almost like we're selfish. We're selfish. We only want what we want, and we don't think of the child. Like, as if the child is never going to grow up, never going to be cognizant enough to understand what his or her parent has done. You know, and when I look at my daughter, and she comes to me every morning, and when she wakes up, and gives me a hug, it is as if the world stopped. When sometimes I'm sitting in front of the computer and I'm typing up something, or I'm on the phone and I'm talking to someone about some business, and she comes and she's like, "Father," and it's like, "Hey, I'm busy. Just give me a few minutes." And even though she's 14, almost 15, she's still a child, you know, very eloquent, because I made sure that I have her speaking properly as much as I can in these modern day times when the language is different and the way that they refer to themselves are different. But when she hugs me, the world stops. If I'm busy and she says, "Father, I would like to have a conversation with you. Can I talk to you?" I'm telling you, Clyde, if I'm writing something and she comes and she asks to have a conversation with me, if it's super important that I must finish it, I tell her, "Give me a few minutes." But if I can take a quick break, I just push the keyboard to the side, turn to her, and give her my undivided attention. And sometimes she'll tell me, "It's going to be 5 minutes, Father, just 5 minutes." Like last night, 5 minutes, 10, you know, she said 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned into an hour and 15 minutes, right? And I sat there and listened to her talk and ask and query, because obviously she's a young lady and she's now going to go to high school and she's interested in boys, and I have to have these conversations. But I'm a practical enough man to know that it is important for me to have this conversation with her. And being around as a father, it's I take pride in that, you know, because the first 9 years of her life, she primarily lived with me, you know. And one day when she's sitting here in the studio and we're having a conversation, because she wants to have a conversation, we talked about having a father-daughter conversation. We'll talk about the things that I've taught her to do. But when we are in relationships and we're selfish enough to think that it's okay to go out there and just wildly do things without being conscientious enough to think about the possibility of what it may do to the child when the child gets older, whether both parents are there or not, right? But the children will grow up. The child or the children will grow up. And there's such thing as a word called resentment, a feeling that's called resentment. The children may develop resentment for one or both parents. There are children that haven't spoken to their parents for 10 years, right? And I can attest to that, because at one point I didn't speak to my mother for many years because of certain behaviors, and I wouldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with it. You know, and I know other people that have had their parents in their life from they were tadpole. Sorry, people, I'm not calling you a tadpole. I'm just saying tadpole. From their tadpole until they're fully grown, right? Every day. And then there's some people that just can't stand their parents for whatever reasons. But I suspect that it could be because of what we're discussing right now, because that's a feeling that is very hurtful to a child. And yeah, we grow up, we grow into adults, but when you observe people that are 50 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, that's still pining over who their mother is, if they were given up for an adoption, or who their father might be if the mother was went out there and did infidelity, or if the father got his woman pregnant, or the woman that he was dealing with pregnant and then ghosted her, and it
Yep. Yeah, no, keep going.
yeah, it is. I just can't understand it. I really can't understand it. And hey, fathers, if you're out there, your child is more important than you. Because if you decide to lay down with a woman and bring forth a child to this earth, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are a upstanding parent. And mothers, if you decide to lay down with a man and have a child, that man is the father of that child. Do not, I repeat, do not hold the child away from his or her father. Some children may grow up and not hold resentment against their mother or against their father, but others will. And when a child holds resentment, it is one of the most hurtful things to a parent. So, as a parent, be mindful of what you are doing as an adult selfishly, and not thinking about how it will affect the child as a child will grow up. Because children will not necessarily say how they feel. All right, when I was growing up, and you, Clyde, when you were growing up, we were told children are to be seen and not heard. You probably heard that too, right? We couldn't open our mouth because, we would get backhanded. That's how we grew up in the different regime. Now children are told that parents can't touch them. parents can't spank them. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong to spank a child. However, we still need to correct our children's behavior. And having a family, both parents, is extremely important because statistically, if a child grows up with his or her mother, the chances are very high they'll go from school to prison. Statistic also says that if a man raises a child, the probability of that child being an upstanding citizen is the same as if two parents raise a child together in a two-parent household, right? I'm not advocating for how you want to live your life, but what I'm saying is think about the consequences when you make your decisions because it affects the children as we get older. Clyde.
Yeah, I think I've looked into that actually. I think it's the best outcome for a child is in a two-parent household.
Yes.
Followed by the next, which is a father raising a child.
Yes.
And we tend to be more instill more discipline in the child. Like we're better with that. And I've heard of horror stories of mothers raising their children. Like I don't know, statistically speaking, they seem to be doing a very bad job. Again, that's not too. I'm just talking about like what the statistics talk about.
Yeah.
I think it's
such a camera.
Yeah, the camera.
Yeah.
I think it's important that like I think they realize that though. Like I've heard the same thing from my coworkers. He had a son. One of them had a son about 4 years ago, and another one who just had a son recently. It's been a few months now, and they both tell me the same thing. One of the most amazing experiences you can have as a man is to see your child being born.
Yes, man.
I keep hearing it everywhere I look now, and I don't have a child now, but it's not because I think of myself as selfish.
No, I want that for you, man. It's.
I'm not. I mean, I guess to an extent that a person can be selfish, I guess, because we all have those tendencies, I guess, like self-preservation, like it goes over. It's not an extreme in myself. Like I can look at myself and be like, okay, look, this thing is way overboard. You need to slow down in this direction. I can see in myself that I'm not an overly selfish person, and I think I would do a very good job at raising a child.
I think so. Based on your character, I've known you for a very, very long time. Especially if your mom's around and that bread.
Yes. Man, when you were talking about your mother, I was thinking about cauliflower petla. Like maybe you guys can look it up. It's like dough, fried dough.
Mm-hmm.
But there's petla, just regular petla, which can be eaten like with sweet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But cauliflower petla is I just had a few before I came over here, and I almost started crying. That's how good they were.
Hey, I'm going to book an appointment at the dentist for you to go get that sweet tooth pulled.
No, but these are not sweet though. Cauliflower petla are not sweet. I wish you could try it, but they have egg.
Yeah.
So they're delicious.
Yeah, people, he's saying that because I don't eat meat. So he said, he wish I could try it because
no
egg.
Meat, no eggs, no.
Right, yeah, because
pescatarian, right?
Yeah, I'm pescatarian. Man, people say, but egg is not meat, and I said, an egg has all the components of the meat. In order for it to become
Right.
a chicken, it has to be
Mhm.
an egg. Before we as human beings
Mhm.
are born, we are the egg is fertilized, and voila, I say voila, we're here today, right? Big
Right.
grown people, right? So, egg is meat. So I don't eat. The crazy thing about it though, if I boil an egg and eat the egg, I've known from experience that I will get nauseous, and so I can't. But if it's baked in bread or things like that, it doesn't really affect me.
I see.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect me, and I've noticed that.
Like French toast type thing. You could probably eat that.
No, because
Not for-
it's too, like,
Uh-huh.
how should I say? It's too saturated with egg,
I see.
and
Okay.
and my stomach will
So,
go.
in other words, there's a slight chance you may like the cauliflower petla.
There might be a slight chance, but
All
it
right.
depends on how. Because if it's bread,
Mhm.
I can eat bread. I've eaten bread,
Yeah.
and it doesn't affect me. But I cannot eat it like
Mhm.
in any like mashed potatoes or anything that it's covered in or smothered in. It affects me. I literally, if the sauce from any meat kind touches my food and I eat it, not knowing, I could smell, but I taste it immediately. But if I ingest it, my body goes into shock. And if it's too much, I go into anaphylactic shock. It has happened to me where I've passed out, like literally, like cold sweat, and like when I eat certain, when I go certain places, I have to make sure I ask them what kind of oil you use. And lots of people I've noticed is like, hey, Soshahi, it's going out with you. It's difficult, right? But because I know what I will experience, I have to be careful who and how they're preparing the food for me. Because if butter, for instance, touches the food, later on, it feels like my stomach is in knots. So yeah, my allergic reaction. I'm happy I learned what my allergies were a long time ago, because I suffered from some serious allergic reaction from eating meat. So this is why I don't eat meat, and I can't, because it's not by choice. I don't eat meat. I have to. I had to stop eating meat once I figured out what was causing these
I see.
bodily pains that I was experiencing, massive migraine headaches and wales in my back. And
In either case, I think it's good for many people to just take a break from things,
yeah,
just as
sure.
a measure of control, to see like if you're
True.
capable of pulling it off. I was a vegetarian for Henry and I did it together, my brother,
Mhm.
for about 2 years. And what started the whole thing, we were already thinking about it, but there was this documentary that I had attempted to watch twice before. And both times I had to stop at the 22-minute mark, because it gets ridiculous, like very gruesome, very violent, like it's one of the worst things I've ever seen, like very graphic, right? And the third time I sat down, I was like, Henry, let's just watch it. Let's see, maybe together we can actually pull through. Literally, that's how it happened, and we actually watched the whole thing. But it's called Earthlings, by the way.
Earthlings?
Earthlings, yeah.
Earthlings or Earthlinks?
Earthlings. If it's on YouTube. It's a documentary about like how he coins the term speciesism, as in any
That makes sense.
a
You know,
horrible thing that
yeah.
is done from like racism, like
Yeah.
things done on account of race,
Right.
speciesism, things done on
The
account
kind
of different species, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, he shows like a whole bunch of stuff. And
So let me
so
crack.
what I'm saying is we had to stop. Like after that, we stopped eating meat. We would do it, and this is the point that I wanna. When we started eating again, like little by little, it was so oversaturating, right? Like eating a little piece was like so overwhelming after not having eaten it for like for a period of
Your time. All right.
I think we consume way too much of anything really, and you become very saturated. You become numb to that
Right.
if you're always doing it.
True.
So
True.
by taking a break, you become more aware of what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. True.
So
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off. Go
So
ahead.
no, it's okay. So right now, we're committing an atrocity against cows, chickens, and whatever other kind of meat that we as humans eat, because we're committing speciesism.
Jesus Christ! Like we went from one horror story to the next,
Yeah.
paternity fraud to speciesism.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that we're going way off topic. So, so people, we have said a lot here and joked around a bit about food and speciesism, but our primary focus is to make sure that we convey not just bad things, or should I say bad things, convey negative things or negative topics, but give some meaningful feedback, meaningful advice on the things that we do, why we do it, and why we should or should not do it. It is important for us to just be cognizant of our behavior. And I understand that we will, no doubt we will make mistakes, because by nature, this is who we are. However, it is very important for us to always remember that the kids, the children, our offspring is very important. So, if you're out there and you're contemplating doing something that may have an adverse effect on your offspring in the future, just be mindful. Don't be selfish. Because selfishness breeds resentment, breeds hate, and worst of all, what's worse than hate is being indifferent. Because when you hate someone, you think of them, you think of how much you hate them, but when you become indifferent, you don't even see them. They are non-existent to you. That's worse than hate. And you would not want your child to grow up one day and have to think, have to beg, have to search to find out who their biological father is, because you were selfish. Okay? And with that being said, I think we had a good talk here, a good show here.
Good first episode for a Risqué Conversation.
Yeah, good first episode for Risqué Conversations. Hey, people, this is Think and Say. Think and Say. So you learn, you think, and then you say. Just remember, we're here to help you, as at the same time while helping ourselves becoming better people in society. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon on another show and on another episode. I bid you well.